You like teenage girls. When you say teenage, how old are we talking?
Have you done anything wrong?
Lots of things wrong.
Audio Jungle. Against her will.
We went from seeing you or talking to you daily or weekly to not seeing you in 2 years.
Kelly was physically and emotionally abusive. We were required to call him daddy.
You're killing me, man! This is not about music!
Hello friends, how are you guys today? I hope you guys are all having an amazing day so far. I hope you guys all had a wonderful and amazing weekend. I hope you got to spend time with your family, and I really hope that you guys got to get outside a little bit, enjoy the nice weather before it starts getting all cold outside. Of course, unless you live in like California or Florida or something, but for the rest of us, it's going to start getting cold out, so I hope you guys all got to get outside and enjoy the weather before it starts getting cold. Today we are going to resume our coverage of the R. Kelly trial. I know last week we reviewed a couple witness testimonies, and today we are going to go through Demetrius Smith's testimony. And his testimony has a lot to do with Aaliyah and R. Kelly's marriage to Aaliyah. We're going to go over Azriel Clary's testimony, which is pretty long. So if we have time, we're going to go over Stephanie's testimony. Now, there was a girl on the witness stand. She was given an alias. Her alias was Stephanie, but I was able to find out her real name. Her name is actually Heather Williams, and we will go over her testimony as well if we have time. If not, we'll do it tomorrow in the next video. So why don't you guys sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Okay, so I want to start this video off like every other video and say thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you guys enjoy this video. If you don't enjoy it, I hope you at least give it a chance. But if you guys are returning to my channel, thank you guys so much for returning to my channel. It really means a lot to me, and I really, really appreciate it. So today we're going to start with Demetrius Smith and his testimony. So Demetrius Smith is a former tour manager of R. Kelly, and when he got on the stand, he was extremely cranky, and he was really just almost like a hostile witness. They had to treat him like a hostile witness almost. Like, he was very cranky. He didn't want to be there. He made it known that he was very uncomfortable on the stand. He didn't want to answer any of the questions. But of course he had to. He claimed that he didn't remember a bunch of stuff, but the things he didn't remember, he actually already had testified to those things in the grand jury. So, of course, the prosecution pulled up his testimony from the grand jury and handed it to him and made him read it out loud. So, I mean, you can't tell the cops in an interview something or testify to a grand jury something, and then when you testify in the trial say, oh, I don't remember, because they'll remind you what you said. So he had to read aloud his grand jury testimony, and he is testifying. Let's remember, guys, he is testifying under a subpoena with immunity. So he definitely doesn't want to be there, but they gave him immunity to testify. But, of course, they've given other people immunity sometimes, and then they ended up putting them in jail, like, Bill Cosby, maybe. So he is worried, you know what I mean? Like, he's worried that R. Kelly and his goons are going to come after him. He's worried about going to jail for something. Like, what if he just starts talking openly and accidentally says something that he wasn't promised immunity for, and they end up charging him with that? So he's really worried. He doesn't want to be there. So he was forced to be there. Okay, so Demetrius Smith starts by talking about one night on tour in 1994. R. Kelly interrupted his tour and said that he had to fly back immediately to Chicago. He said that Aaliyah was in trouble. And he said, well, he did mention this in the documentary, the docuseries Surviving R. Kelly. If you guys haven't seen that, I suggest you check it out. It is on Netflix right now. It gives you a lot of insight into his past and everything, but he mentioned in this documentary that he was like, oh, well, I'll call Barry. And Barry Hankerson, of course, is Aaliyah's uncle and R. Kelly's manager at the time. And R. Kelly told him, no, don't call Barry. It's deeper than you think, and just don't tell Barry. So Demetrius starts talking about how they went to Chicago, and he admitted that he bribed an official at the Chicago Public Aid Office to get Aaliyah a fake ID so that she could get married. It's said that he married Aaliyah because she was pregnant, and he did not want to be in trouble for sleeping with a 15-year-old, of course, and he thought that, it's spousal privilege. A wife can't testify against her husband, and that is why they got married. So they went, and Demetrius said that they went to a public aid office, and he walked in, and he said, I quote, I went to the welfare office. I went into the office, and I said, hey, you want to make some money, end quote. He said that R. Kelly's associate, Daryl McDavid, who was R. Kelly's accountant and manager as well at the time, and he was the one that was pushing R. Kelly to marry Aaliyah. So he said that he wasn't the one. He said that it was not R. Kelly's idea, and he said it wasn't me, it was this other guy, Daryl. He said, I did help, but it was this other guy's idea, not me. And then he also said that it was not R. Kelly's idea either. He said Daryl was pushing R. Kelly to marry Aaliyah to protect himself. The prosecution said, protect him for what? And Damien said, jail, I guess. Okay. Jail, okay. Well, that's the only thing. What else would you need protection from if you were sleeping with a 15-year-old? He said he thought it was a bad idea because Aaliyah was underage, but he said, I wanted to stay in the loop. He said, I told Rob he shouldn't listen to Daryl, and Rob turned to me and said, quote, whose side are you on? Okay, we've heard that before a lot with R. Kelly's associates and his entourage. We've heard that before. He likes to say that a lot, like, whose side are you on? And Rob's rules, you hear a lot about Rob's rules in the testimony of all his girlfriends, but Rob's rules is not just for his girls, it's for his employees as well, and they had to follow Rob's rules also. So Demetrius goes on to say he was scared to be pushed out of Rob's inner circle, but he was always in objection of what Rob was being told to do. So I don't know. He is not quite helping the prosecution here, because the prosecution is trying to create this whole scene that there's this big criminal enterprise, and R. Kelly is at the very top, and he is telling everyone what to do, and he is the CEO of this huge criminal enterprise. But when Demetrius gets on the stand, he is saying that it wasn't Rob's idea to marry Aaliyah. He was being told to do this, and it wasn't his idea. He wasn't the one coming up with this stuff. He was being told to do this by someone else. So the legal experts are saying that the prosecution isn't really painting that good of a picture of racketeering charge, of R. Kelly being the head of a criminal enterprise. But I'll get into that more at the end of the video. But he didn't really help the prosecution by saying this. But Demetrius is also facing charges, and he's going to be on trial soon back in Chicago. So he's trying to get off scot-free from everything. He got immunity in New York to testify, and he is trying to get off scot-free, and he's facing charges back in Chicago. So I don't know how that's going to happen for him. I don't know if he's going to be able to get off everything scot-free, but he's definitely trying. So he's really walking on eggshells on the witness stand and really afraid to say the wrong thing. Demetrius went on and he said that Aaliyah and him went to the welfare office to get her picture taken for her fake ID. He didn't know what store it was called when they had to go get the picture taken. He said that it was like a shipping or a printing store, but he doesn't remember the name of it. He said Aaliyah did not fill out any paperwork at the welfare office at all. He said they ended up getting Aaliyah 2 separate work IDs, but neither one of them had her age on it. So when the prosecution asked him how he could obtain the marriage license without her age on the work IDs, he started acting erratic. That is when he started acting erratic, and he was saying that he felt like he was on trial for Aaliyah, and he said, "I don't want to answer this question. I feel like I am on trial," end quote. The prosecution reminded him again he was under oath, and then he said, quote, "I feel threatened by the prosecution, and I want to go home now." End quote. Like, excuse me, sir, you did all of this. You took Aaliyah, this poor 15-year-old girl, to get her these fake IDs and allowed this to happen. You helped it happen. And now you're on the stand saying, "I don't want to answer this question. I feel threatened. I want to go home." Like, no, sir. You're going to sit your ass there and you're going to answer. Anyway, he then said he was on the plane with Robert R. Kelly, and he was crying and telling him not to tell Barry, and he thought that Aaliyah was pregnant. So he did tell everybody in court that R. Kelly was crying on the plane and saying that he thought Aaliyah was pregnant. At this time, in the courtroom, the reporters said that R. Kelly took a large, deep breath and sighed. And they've been saying the whole time that R. Kelly looked emotionless the whole time. Anytime anybody was really testifying, he pretty much is completely emotionless. He just stared straight forward at the wall and really had no emotion. But when Demetrius was saying this, he ended up taking a large breath and sighing very loudly. Demetrius then said, quote, "I am truly uncomfortable with this, Your Honor. Continuously talking about Aaliyah and her parents aren't here," end quote. But the prosecution didn't stop. That didn't stop them. They grilled him, saying, "You're saying you didn't have anything to do with the marriage stuff." But they had a clerk on the stand before Demetrius. They had a clerk that worked in the office where you get the marriage license. They had that clerk, that woman, on the stand before Demetrius. And she said that you cannot get a marriage license with work IDs without the date of birth on them. They are not accepted for a marriage license. So they were asking him if the only thing you did was help her get work IDs from the public aid office, but it didn't have her date of birth on it, how did they get the marriage license? And they kept asking him, like, how did you guys get the marriage license if you didn't have an ID with her date of birth on it? And he just kept saying, "I'm truly uncomfortable with this, Your Honor. I don't want to answer this question. I feel threatened." Eventually, he did answer the question, and he said it wasn't him. He said it was Daryl, this Daryl McDavid person. He said, "I don't know what kind of strings Daryl pulled to get them to accept the IDs, but Daryl did it. It was not me." Then he started getting into how R. Kelly met Aaliyah. He said Barry Hankerson did inform R. Kelly that Aaliyah was only 14 years old when R. Kelly met Aaliyah. So he said that he was there and he knows for a fact that Aaliyah's uncle told R. Kelly that Aaliyah was only 14 years old. So he knew she was only 14. I mean, of course, everybody knew by that time she was a star. So he can't say he didn't know her age. But he is confirming that Barry did tell him she was only 14 years old. So Demetrius Smith, R. Kelly, and one other guy from his entourage, I cannot find out who it is. They are all three facing indictments, and the prosecution is saying that all three of them conspired together to fix R. Kelly's 2008 child pornography trial by getting witnesses to change their story. So this is what the prosecution is saying, and it makes sense to me now why Demetrius Smith is so nervous and uncooperative on the stand. Because if he was once in the group of people who was conspiring and bullying witnesses to change their stories in the other trial that R. Kelly had, then he knows, like, the wrath, sort of. He knows the wrath of R. Kelly's entourage. So if he's up there on the stand, think about this. He used to be the guy who would force you to change your story, and now he's the one up there on the stand spilling his guts. So he's probably afraid that he's going to get in trouble, or he's going to get hurt or something, because remember the doctor that we talked about in the other video, in the previous video, R. Kelly's doctor said that he was leaving town as soon as he gets off the stand. He is leaving town. He is not telling anybody where he's going. He's going into hiding. And right after he got off the stand, he was completely doxxed. His home address, his work address, his phone numbers, everything was doxxed and leaked for everyone. So there is it does seem that there is some sort of punishment for people who go against R. Kelly, and that kind of says that there's gotta be some sort of enterprise there. But it seems like the prosecution is having a hard time proving an enterprise. And like I said, we'll talk more about that at the end, but Demetrius then went on to describe the wedding. He described the hotel. He described the view. He described the jogging suits. They were wearing matching jogging suits. He said Aaliyah had her hair in her face, and they got married. And right after they got married, he went back on tour immediately. So it's not like it was this nice thing, of course, probably. And he went directly on back to on tour, wherever they were. So that pretty much sums up Demetrius Smith and his testimony. We are going to go ahead and get into Azriel Clary. We'll do her first, and if we have time, we'll do Heather Williams, aka Stephanie's testimony. So let's go ahead and get into Azriel Clary and her testimony. Whew. Okay, guys, so Azriel Clary, let's get into her testimony, and as you all know, she is Jane Doe number 5, and she started by saying how she met Rob. She said she met him at one of his concerts in 2015. She actually went to that concert with her parents. A member of Rob's entourage approached her and gave her a wristband so she could watch the show from the pit and then go backstage to meet Rob afterwards. Now, this is something that we've heard time and time again from these girls on the witness stand. They all say that they went to a concert, or if they met him at the mall or McDonald's or wherever, it was always a member of Rob's entourage that approached them and gave them his phone number and told them to call him or whatever. So she said, quote, "He sang a lot of songs for me and showed me a lot of attention," end quote. After the show, another member of the entourage approached her and gave her a piece of paper with Rob's number on it and said, quote, "Don't tell anyone," end quote. So at first they approached her and gave her the pit so she can go sit in the pit, and gave her a backstage pass. But then after she met him, they approached her again and gave her his phone number. She did tell Rob at first that she was 18, and she did admit on the stand that she did lie to him and told him that she was 18 when she was not. So she admitted on the stand that she lied. She claims that she later told him she was underage. She talked to Rob after the show, and he agreed to let her audition for him. So she then met him around 3 a.m. at the Walt Disney World Dolphin Resort in the parking lot at 3 a.m. She went alone, and he was waiting for her outside in a big black van. He had her sit on his lap in the van, and he said, "Give me a kiss." And she said she gave him a small peck. After a while, they went inside to the hotel, and she was there to audition, she said. She said, quote, "I just wanted to sing. I genuinely just wanted his input." She said she was not interested in him romantically, but he made it very clear. Trigger warning, you guys, trigger warning. She said he made it very clear that he would not talk about her singing career until he ejaculated. Gross. So gross. He had her walk back and forth in the hotel room in her underwear while he did himself. So he just had her walk back and forth in her underwear while he pleasured himself, or whatever you want to call it. She said she did not want anything sexual, and she thought that just walking back and forth would be better than having sex with him. She said that he then insisted and was adamant about giving her oral. She said, quote, "He told me before we got inside I had to turn off my phone because sometimes people try to record him. But then he pulled out an iPad from his bag and recorded me." I don't know. He wants to have all the recordings, but he doesn't want anybody else to have any recordings that they could use against him. He wants to have it all to use against them, of course. She said her parents actually ended up calling 911 because they could not get a hold of her because he had her turn her phone off. So they ended up getting worried and calling 911 and sending the cops to that hotel because, I mean, I guess her parents were supportive of her underage going to meet R. Kelly at 3 a.m. at this hotel to audition. Her parents knew about it and let her go, I guess, but when it had been a while and they couldn't get a hold of her, her phone was off, they got worried and they called the police and sent the police out there. So the cops actually came to the hotel room, and Robert made her hurry up and get clothes on. The cops asked her her age, and she said she was 18, but the cops insisted on seeing her ID. That sounds crazy. Could you guys imagine? She ended up giving the cops her ID that said she was not 18 on the ID. It said her real age. But the cops looked at her ID and just gave it back to her and looked at Robert and said, "If you're ever in town and you need security, please let us know." And they gave him their business cards and they left. So either the cops were too stupid to do math, or they realized she wasn't 18 and didn't care. I mean, either one, they're stupid. She then went on and said that Rob recorded every single sex act they ever did all over the country. She said she had to call him daddy. We've heard that before. And she said that she had to pee in a cup. She said if you did not have permission to go to the bathroom, then you had to pee in an extra large cup from the gas station, which you guys will hear that several times from these girls. He made her delete all of her social media accounts, and he also made her tell him one thing she appreciated about him each day. He made her crawl on her knees, hands and knees, and perform oral on him, and she had to, quote, obey. She then said that Cheryl Mack, his assistant, who is London on the Track's mother, she said Cheryl Mack, his assistant, knew she was not of age and still booked her flights for her many times. She said he would record them having sex at various tour stops, which is a violation of the Mann Act and is a felony. So transporting girls across state lines for crude sexual acts, prostitution, or debauchery, or for any other immoral purpose over state lines is a violation of the Mann Act. And debauchery, if you don't know what it means, I didn't either. I had to look it up. Debauchery means excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures. So if you are transporting girls across state lines for debauchery or crude sexual acts, prostitution, or any immoral purpose, that is a violation of the Mann Act and is a felony. She said they were at Lincoln Park having hot dogs when she told him her real age. She said, when I told him, he slapped me with an open palm and walked away. She said he had never hit her before. He then calmed down and persuaded her to come back, then ordered her to go back to Florida and finish school. So this part of her testimony had all the R. Kelly fans, like, happy, you know? All his supporters were happy, and they were like, well, exactly. She lied to him about her age, and when she told him about her age, he had a right to be mad. But then he ordered her to go back and finish school. Like, what a great guy. I guess. I mean, that sounds like a great guy, just that little part. But just a week later, she was back living with him in Chicago, and he didn't have her finish school. He did speak to his attorneys and decided to have Azriel's mother sign a letter of consent that would put Azriel under the care of an employee's mother until December 30th, 2015, when she turned 18. So he had her mother sign a letter of consent that would put Azriel under the care of one of his employees' mothers, and that way she could attend online high school classes and finish high school, I guess. And of course that way he couldn't get in trouble either, because, you know, she was allowed to be there, consent from her mother. She said she lived with Rob, of course, and not the employee's mother. They moved to Chicago, and she began taking online classes to finish high school. Months later, she said she began experiencing severe pain when they would have sex. She started to cry on the stand, and this is when, like, she started sobbing, is when she recalled the moment when she realized she had contracted genital herpes. So when she started telling that part of her testimony, she started getting very upset, very emotional. She started to cry and sob, and her voice got really shaky. It was just very sad. She said she had pain in her pelvis and in her lower abdomen to the point where she could not even walk. Rob then made her a doctor's appointment. Juice, who is R. Kelly's female assistant of some kind, I guess, she took Azriel to the doctor for her pain, and the doctor did some tests and told her that she had contracted vaginal herpes. At this point in her testimony, Rob again looked very emotionless. According to the reporters in the courtroom, he just stared ahead. He looked emotionless. He did not seem to care at all about her reliving her trauma and her pain of having that. I mean, I know it's not life-threatening, but it is something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. There's no cure for genital herpes. That's awful. That's so awful. She said that Rob had a heartless response to her constant herpes outbreaks. After sex, he looked at her and said, quote, "I think your pussy is broken," end quote. Which, yeah, that's very extremely heartless and ridiculous. This asshole gave this girl, not even 18 yet, gave her genital herpes that she's going to have to live with for the rest of her life. And then when she has an outbreak, he tells her something like that. That's just, oof. She said that when she would have an outbreak, Rob would make a joke and say, quote, "Everyone has it. It's no big deal," end quote. What? What the hell is wrong with him? Everyone does not have it, and it is a big deal. What is wrong? I can't with this asshole. I can't. Okay. The jury was then shown notes that she wrote to herself to remind her to stay in line. The notes would say things like, quote, "Tell daddy everything," end quote. In 2015, he introduced her to chastising, which is we've heard before, and you guys will hear from all the other girls, chastising or spankings to remember Rob's rules. She said, quote, "I would get chastised every 2 to 3 days. He would leave bruises and sometimes it would make my skin tear," end quote. He called them chastisements, whatever. She said during her 5 years with him, he would physically abuse her and the other girls if they broke his long list of Rob's rules. If it was a small rule they broke, he would chastise them. And she said he would abuse them with slaps or punches, drag them by their hair, even hitting them with objects like shoes or cords. She said they would also be locked in rooms for days. She said he would force the girls to have sex with each other. She said Rob sexually humiliated her in front of his stylist, Cash. She said that she got punished for buying extra small pants instead of large or extra large. Because we've heard this before, and you guys will hear it again several times. All of the girls had to wear baggy clothes. It was part of Rob's rules. If they were not accompanying him out on the town, they had to wear baggy clothes no matter what. So he kept her locked in a room for 3 days straight because she bought extra small pants. There was not a lock on the door, but she was afraid to leave the room. She knew she wasn't allowed to. So he would force her to write letters, exploiting herself or like telling falsehoods about herself or her family. One time she said she stole the letters from him and she was sorry. One letter also said that she was molested by family members, but on the stand she said that that was absolutely not true. He forced her to write these letters, saying that her parents used her private parts, and she hates her parents. The letters said that they dropped her off to Rob at 3 a.m. and tried to use her to extort money from Rob, all of which she said on the stand were not true. So they did force her, I think it was the defense, they did force her to read all these letters aloud where she was molested by a family member, her parents used her to exploit money from Rob, all of this stuff. And she said she did read them, but then she said that none of them were true. He forced her to write those things, which if you you'll continue to hear that from all the girls. He forced everybody to write letters like that, and he gave them all to his attorney for safekeeping. His live-in girlfriend, named Juice, Juice is the woman who is his live-in girlfriend and his assistant. Now, this woman would check the signatures on these letters that he made them write, and she would compare those signatures to the signatures on these girls' IDs and make sure the signatures matched before she gave the letters to his attorneys. What? This woman, why is she being charged? I haven't heard of her being charged, but this woman she watched the girls and made sure they were obeying and didn't leave the rooms and all that stuff. This woman needs to be charged as well, I think, with maybe like false imprisonment or something. I don't know. Sorry. She also described an incident where she said Rob had her in tears from 12 chastisements or spankings. Then, once she was in tears, he turned on his iPad and recorded her and forced her to say that she was molested by her father, and he forced her to describe a falsehood incident where her father molested her. So he forced her to make up an entire incident of her father molesting her, like a false memory. Like he made her make up a whole thing and recorded her saying it so he could use it later, probably, which is just absolutely disgusting. Makes me fucking sick. Okay. All right. Another punishment she described was once Rob was displeased with her on-camera enthusiasm, so he made her smear her own feces on her face and even made her eat her own feces. Oh, Jesus. Trigger warning right here, you guys. It gets nasty. Another punishment she described while on the stand was once Rob was displeased with her on-camera enthusiasm. So, of course, every time they would have sex or do any kind of sexual act, he would record it. And he was displeased with her on-camera enthusiasm one time, and he made her smear her own feces on her face and even made her eat her own feces. And he recorded it. Not only did he record it, but on top of all of that, he forced her to pretend to enjoy what she was doing. And not only that, but he told her that she did not seem like she enjoyed it enough, so he made her redo it. Do it again, and he filmed it a second time. So he made her do something this disgusting and pretend to enjoy it. And then when she was done, he told her that it didn't look like she enjoyed it enough. So he forced her to do it again. What the f***? What kind of disgusting deviant is he? She said that there would be times he would make me leave his... Oh, Jesus. Okay, trigger warning again. She said there would be times where he would make me leave his ejaculate on my face. He told me to leave it on and let it harden. End quote. She said then he would call an associate into the room, and she said he forced me to have an entire conversation with that associate with that on her face. She said, I recall them laughing, and I felt very much humiliated. Jesus. Poor girl. Like, what the hell? She spoke of her punishments a lot. During the 5 years she lived with him, she said he forced her to have sex with strange men as well for punishment, which I don't freaking understand at all, because one of the main rules that you will hear from all these girls is that they are not allowed to speak to men. They are not allowed to look at men. If a man speaks to them, they have to look down or turn away. If they're even out shopping and the store associate that helps them is a man, they have to walk away. They're not allowed to be helped by a man. He canceled a whole trip one time because the volunteer person, tour guide was a man. So they're not allowed to do any of this, but then he forces them to have sex with other men for punishment. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. She said that she told Rob that she had a conversation with some of the other girlfriends who lived in the house, which is a big no-no. It's against Rob's rules. The girlfriends are not allowed to speak to each other no matter what, I guess. After she told him this, he then, of course, chastised her and the other girls as well. She said he hit them 15 times each and then started hitting her some more. She said that he told her he would think of a punishment for her, as if getting the crap beat out of her wasn't good enough, I guess. She said that she said that he told me I would be meeting someone named Nephew. He told her to go back to the hotel room and freshen up and put on something skimpy. He forced her to have sex with this guy named Nephew that she never met before in her life. She said that, of course, R. Kelly recorded it. She said this happened multiple times and R. Kelly would film it naked. That's okay. What? So he wasn't engaging in the act, but he was still just standing there naked filming it. That just sounds like a nightmare to me. Oh my God. I don't mean to laugh. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. He would sometimes join in, she said. Okay, so sometimes he would join in. But sometimes he would not join in and still film it naked. Oh, well, okay. While he filmed it, he would direct it as well and give them like literally play-by-play direction, as if he was a director and he was directing a porn or something. She said, quote, he had been grooming Nephew from when he was young like me, end quote. She said he told her this, and he actually said, quote, I had been grooming him since he was young like you. Okay, so Rob, she's quoting Rob on the stand, and she said that Rob told her, quote, I had been grooming him since he was young like you, end quote. He even used the word grooming. That's creepy. That's so weird. The prosecution then asked her if she wanted to have sex with Nephew, and she said, quote, never. They said, then why did you? Why did you then? And she said, because it was my punishment. If I didn't, I would probably be left somewhere for a long time. So she said it was her punishment, and if she didn't do it, she was afraid she would be left somewhere or locked somewhere for a long time. Like that one time, she said her punishment was he locked her in a room for 3 days with no food or water or anything. Azriel Clary talked a lot about the stuff that they were not allowed to do or watch on TV. She said that they absolutely were not allowed to watch the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries when it came out. She said, quote, we weren't allowed to watch it at all, but he did let us know that there was a documentary coming out, and he told us that everything in it was false. We had to change the channel if it came on TV. How is this idiot going to be doing the same exact thing to all his girlfriends at the time and then say, there's going to be a documentary coming out, but everything's false, when they're living the shit right now? They are living through it right now. How the hell is he going to tell them it's false? None of it's true, even though I'm doing the same thing to you. What an idiot. What an idiot. R. Kelly told her that he instructed his attorneys to send cease and desist to everyone in the documentary. Anyone and everyone. She said that R. Kelly asked them, quote, if there was a time to stand up and speak publicly, if we would do it, and we all said yes. So he asked them if there was, and if ever a time came that they had to do an interview or stand up and speak out publicly in favor of him, if they would do it. And of course they all said yes. I mean, nobody's going to say no. He demanded to know if the girls would lie for him if they were asked, and they said yes. The Gayle King interview. Do you guys remember the Gayle King interview after the docuseries came out where he freaking went nuts? This one?
For my life, y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You're killing me, man. This is not about music. I need somebody to help me not have a big heart, because my heart is so big. People betray me, and I keep forgiving them.
You sound like you're playing the victim here.
Yeah, that interview. That interview, it took place at the Trump Towers, and he had an apartment at the Trump Towers where him and those two girls lived. Because after his interview, Gayle King interviewed Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage. And those two girls both said that he was great and blah, 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 whatever. Okay, so she started talking about this Gayle King interview, and she said that everything she said in that interview was a total lie. She said none of it was true. She said R. Kelly would practice with her and Joycelyn Savage their lines. They would rehearse questions, and if they didn't know an answer, R. Kelly would tell them exactly what to say. She said that he had agreed to not be in the room during their interview, but he was in the room still, and he was just not where the camera could see. But she said that he was coughing the entire time during their interview. She said that if they said something he didn't like, or if they took too long to answer a question, or if they didn't know the answer, he would cough really loud to remind them that he was in the room and to remind them to keep on their script. She said that R. Kelly told her that her parents sold her to him. She said he would tell her she was worthless and their parents don't care about her, or any of the other girl. He would tell all the girlfriends this. They were worthless, their parents don't care about y'all, and you're in a better situation now, is what he would tell them. He also told her that an associate gave her parents a few bricks for her. Not money, but bricks, drugs. She said, she never said that her parents accepted the bricks, and she also never said if her parents even knew about the abuse. She said, quote, eventually I couldn't talk to them at all because they would always want to know about my well-being, end quote. So I guess she couldn't lie to her parents when they would ask about her well-being, so she just wouldn't talk to them. Then the cross-examination, the defense started asking her questions. They tried to tear her apart by saying that her parents wanted to be a part of R. Kelly's entourage. Her parents wanted to be a part of his inner circle, so they were trying to poke holes in her story. Her parents wanted to invent, first of all, her parents were always trying to get R. Kelly to, give them money and invest in their, business deals and stuff like that all the time. Like, her dad wanted to do the lighting for one of his concerts, but he declined. And her parents even wanted to invent a Bluetooth dildo that would sync to R. Kelly's music and would vibrate to his music, which, okay. So they wanted to invent this, and they wanted R. Kelly to be a part in this and be an investor or whatever in this, but he declined on that as well. So, she said that she willingly skipped school to go on tour with R. Kelly because she said she would skip school and go on tour with him, but the defense asked her, and I guess she admitted that she willingly skipped school to go on tour with him. They told her you could have left if you wanted to. They said, so after being violated, you flew out to meet him. Because I guess she said that she was violated at first, but then she flew out to meet him. They were just trying to make her look like she was trying to exploit R. Kelly. Rob's attorney then started talking about the discrepancies between her testimony and her interviews back in 2020 with the feds. The defense said that when she was telling the story of their first sexual encounter, she actually named 2 different cities. In her interview, she said it was in one city, and then on the stand, she said it was a different city. So they started saying that there was discrepancies in her stories because of that. The defense said, after you and Rob started interacting, your parents proposed a number of business deals to Rob, correct? She said, yes, that is correct. They asked about the Bluetooth dildo, and she said, again, yes, that is correct. So apparently with all of the business deals that her parents wanted, R. Kelly didn't ever turn her parents down to their face, but then he would tell Azriel afterwards that that was not something that he was interested in or something that he wanted to do. He did not endorse her parents in any way, and he did not invest in the Bluetooth dildo. In 2017, Azriel said that she got pregnant and she was forced by him and Cheryl Mack to get an abortion. So she said that she got pregnant, and we'll actually hear this from several of the survivors. They gotten pregnant and they were forced to get an abortion. They say they were forced to get an abortion, and not only is Rob forcing her, but this Cheryl Mack woman is forcing her to get this abortion, which is disgusting. But that pretty much concludes Azriel's testimony. She was actually on the stand for like 3 days. So I tried to take all of the main things that she spoke about and that the defense tried to cross her on, and put it all like together and make it a little shorter. But she was on the stand for like 3 days. So that is her testimony. And let's go ahead and go through Stephanie, aka Heather Williams, Jane Doe number 2. Let's go through her testimony. Let's see. All right, so Stephanie, who is Heather Williams, she is now 39 years old. Rob's handler, of course, approached her when she was 16 years old. The reporters said that Rob looked very nervous while this woman testified. I don't know why he would be so nervous when she was testifying, when Azriel Clary was up there for 3 days talking about the most disgusting things, and he looked unfazed. But the reporters nonetheless said that he was very nervous when she was on the stand, and they said that he kept shaking his head and kept looking around, and he just looked very nervous. So she said that she was at the Rock and Roll McDonald's, no less, when she met him in 1998 when she was 16 years old. Now, the Rock and Roll McDonald's was given this name because it is the McDonald's in Chicago that R. Kelly met several young girls and boys. And so that's what they call this McDonald's, because he was always there, and I guess that's where he met his girls, a lot of the girls and boys. And that's why they started calling the Walgreens across the street the Rock and Roll Walgreens, because that is across the street, and that's where he would get his Valtrex, his herpes medication, and then he would go across the street right after picking up that medication and try and get more young girls and boys. He's foul. Okay, so Rob's handlers gave her a slip of paper with his number on it, and she said that she told this man that gave her the paper that she was only 16 years old. And he said, he gave her the paper, and he said, R. Kelly wants you to call him. And she said, I told this man I was only 16 years old. And he said, R. Kelly still wants you to call him. So why are these handlers not in trouble? I mean, come on. They knew what he was doing, and they still tried to get these young minor girls for him. Anyway, She said she actually had no intention whatsoever on calling him, and she actually threw out his number. She said a year went by and she was working at a hotel. She said she knew he was going to be at the Nike store around the corner from where she worked. And she said at the time her best friend was an aspiring singer, and she thought that she could help her best friend get in an audition. So she went to the Nike store and she approached him. Where am I? So she went to the Nike store and she approached Robert, and he said that he actually remembered her from the year before, and they started talking. She went with him and sat in his car, and she was trying to help her friend and pitch her friend's music to him. She said she asked him if her friend could have an audition, and he said, quote, "Yeah, that can be arranged, but I would also like to get to know you." He then said, "I like to cuddle. Are you okay with that?" What? Oh, that just sounds ridiculous. She said the next week she went to his studio and she was escorted into a room, and R. Kelly wasn't even there. He showed up hours later and sat close to her on the couch and laid his head on her shoulder and apologized for the delay. So we've also heard this a lot, not the apology part, but we've heard it a lot that R. Kelly will escort these girls or have these girls escorted into a certain room, and they'd like shut the door and literally lock them in there for hours and hours or days until he showed up and decided to go in there. So after he apologized for the delay, they ended up having sex. He initiated the sex, she said. He wanted her to call him daddy. After they had sex, she told Rob she was only 17, and he said, quote, "That's okay." She said this was the lowest point in her life. She said that she had already experienced sexual trauma from a family member, a boss, and someone on the street. She said she had very low self-esteem, and she was very vulnerable at this time in her life. She said she went to see him twice a week for about 6 months, and they would have sex. She said he would yell at her, and it would scare the crap out of her. She said he was either nice and charming, or he was controlling and intimidating. She said he put the fear of God into me very quickly, end quote. She said sex with Rob was very humiliating. She said he controlled every part of the encounter, even instructing her on how she should moan. That just sounds so freaking weird to me. What is wrong with him? He's got to have something like wrong with him. Like he is gross. Ugh, I don't know. She said he would frequently, trigger warning. She said he would frequently ejaculate on her face, leaving her feeling disgusted and less than. At times, he would make her assume a certain sex position and hold it. He would leave the room for hours and yell at her if she moved. So he must have been watching on like a camera or something, and he would yell like really loud to where she could hear him if she moved. She said, "I was there naked with my butt in the air." What is wrong? Like, why would you do that to somebody? Like, that's just so humiliating and gross. Like, I don't know. She said she was in the car with Rob and 2 other people after he played a basketball game where he made her give him oral sex despite the company in the car. She said it was disgusting because he had just been playing basketball for an hour. So, yeah, that's gross. He's all sweaty. Ugh. She said she was embarrassed and she tried to be quiet about it, but he told her to make noise. She said, obviously, he wanted the people in the car to know what was going on, end quote. She said he filmed their sexual encounters. She said she was really scared and didn't want to do it, but she said okay. She said he confided in her friend. Oh, I'm sorry. She said she confided in her friend, and her friend told her to get the hell out of there. But she didn't. In October 1999, Robert flew her and her friend to Orlando for a long weekend, and he didn't even show up until the last day she was there. She thought he actually forgot she was even down there at all. She said he then contacted her the very last night, or the very last day, and made her see him and made her perform oral sex on him while he filmed it, of course. She said sometimes he would use 2 recorders at once, and this was 1999, so it wasn't like his phone or the iPad. It was like a big handheld recorder. 2 at once? That is just weird. When they were done, he took her back, and she said she cried the entire time in the car. After that, she said she was done. That's when she realized she can't do this anymore. She's completely done. She said, I felt used, humiliated, and degraded. So at this point, he still had the tapes, and she was afraid they would surface. So she said she asked him if he would give her the tapes or destroy them, and he refused to do so. She said she left and never spoke to him again. She said she had never spoke about her time with him, ever, and she never will again after her testimony. Even though it was 20 years ago, she said she's still very traumatized. She said she was never treated that way before, never treated that way since. She was humiliated and degraded, and it was the worst point in her life. That is so sad. I can't even imagine what these girls went through with him. That is just so sad. And she had already experienced sexual trauma before she met him. So, and she said that was the worst point in her life. She said in court that Rob sexually abused her, and she also said that he told her and 2 other people that he should be able to have sex with very young girls because he is a genius. You heard that right. He said that he should be able to have sex with very young girls because he is a genius. She said she started describing an instance where she said she was out to dinner with Rob and 2 rappers called Boo and Gotti. She said when they were all out eating, she was not allowed to speak to the other rappers, but she said Rob just had a weird outburst, and nothing really prompted this outburst, but he decided to just start talking about this, and he said that he liked really young girls, and people make too big of a deal about it. He said, look at Jerry Lee Lewis. He is a genius, and I'm a genius. We should be able to do whatever we want. Look at what we gave the world. First of all, Jerry Lee Lewis is a rock and roll musician who married his 13-year-old cousin, and you should never idolize somebody like that. That is disgusting. And he said, he's a genius, and I'm a genius. We should be able to do whatever we want. Look at what we gave the world. Look at what we gave the world. What? So he is saying that because he gave the world some good music, he should be able to do whatever he wants. He should be able to do this to these young girls, and no one should care. They should just let him do it. That's disgusting. So Nicole Blank Becker, on the defense, Robert's attorney, she noted that on her cross, she noted that the Illinois age of consent is 17 years old. And they kept talking to her about her decision to continue to see him. So, like, she was basically saying, you were 17 when you started, being around him and doing whatever. because she did say that she met him when she was 16, but she threw the number out, and she ran into him a year later when she was 17, and that's when she first had sex with him. And Nicole, his attorney, noted that the age of consent is 17 in Illinois, so it doesn't matter. And then she also kept telling her, well, you're the one who kept going back with him. It was your decision to continue to see him. So basically just saying he did nothing illegal, so what does it matter? No. It matters. It's disgusting. But that was her testimony. Now, so we got through everybody's testimony. I just want to talk real quick about the legal experts. There has been several legal experts talking lately, saying that they don't know how this case is going. They said the prosecution has definitely proven that Robert or R. Kelly is a sexual deviant. They've definitely proven that he likes young girls. They have proven that he spread his STD to a lot of these young girls, but they haven't proven that they haven't proven a criminal enterprise. They haven't proven racketeering at all, really. They've proven he's an asshole, horrible boss, and he docks his employees' pay if they don't do something right. But at the same time, they're saying that they're not doing a good job at proving racketeering and proving a criminal enterprise. They're saying, yeah, they proved that he likes young girls and he's a sexual deviant, but that's not the charges here. And I mean, it is true. So I am a little worried about how it's going, because Demetrius Smith was supposed to be like this big witness, and when he was on the stand, he said, well, Rob was being told to do this stuff by this other guy, and basically saying that Rob is not the head of all of this. It's not all his idea. He's not the one pulling the strings. So it's kind of, I think maybe Demetrius Smith hurt the prosecution more than it helped. But at the same time, I mean, who knows? Like, juries can be unpredictable. They can just convict Robert on just how horrible of a person he is, and they can just convict him that way. But that'll also be grounds for an appeal if he can get that. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I want to know what you guys think about what the legal experts said, what you guys think about the testimony so far. And tomorrow we will continue with the testimony from, let's see, who are we going to talk about tomorrow? We did John Pace. So we'll go on tomorrow with some more of the Jane Does and maybe the John Doe and one of his employees, Tom Arnold. There was also the preacher testified who married him and Aaliyah. So we'll get into all of that tomorrow, but I just want to know what you guys think of the testimony and the trial so far. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you guys liked this video or found it informative, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and it really, really helps. Other than that, you guys, we will continue to cover this trial together, and yeah, I guess that's it. So just let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys later in a world where you can be anything. You guys, please be kind to each other. Love you guys. Bye.